My grandson accused me of hitting him, turning my family against me. These words echoed in my mind, each syllable a hammer striking my already fragile heart. I, Amelia, at 68 years old, had always been the matriarch, the pillar of our family in a quiet Connecticut suburb. My Sundays were filled with laughter, the smell of apple pie, and the joy of seeing my children and grandchildren gathered. But on that day, everything fell apart. My grandson, Ethan, just 7 years old, with his blue eyes that always reminded me of my late husband's, pointed his finger at me and said I had hurt him. The accusation, like an uncontrollable fire, swept through the house, consuming years of love and dedication. My daughter, Sarah, Ethan's mother, looked at me with a mixture of shock and repulsion. My son, David, who had always been my safe harbor, averted his gaze, unable to defend me. I was falsely accused, isolated, my reputation destroyed in a matter of minutes. The injustice was a suffocating weight, a public shame that choked me. Every whisper, every look of pity or condemnation from my own loved ones was a stab. How could I have reached this point? How did the woman who dedicated her life to her family become, overnight, the villain of the story? If you've ever felt the pain of being misunderstood, of having your truth silenced, or of fighting against an unjust accusation, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your story might be the next one told. The pain of the accusation was a heavy burden, but the truth, like a stubborn flame, burned within me. I hadn't hurt Ethan. I loved him more than words could express. I remembered the years, ever since my husband Robert passed away, how I dedicated myself to being the perfect grandmother. I took Ethan to the park, read him stories, taught him to bake cookies in my kitchen, which always smelled of cinnamon and affection. He was the light of my eyes, the continuation of the love Robert and I built. But now, that light was obscured by the shadow of distrust. Sarah, my daughter, had always been a bit impulsive, but David, my eldest son, was the hardest to accept. He, who always defended me, now looked at me with eyes of doubt. "Mom, Ethan is scared. He wouldn't lie about something like this," he said, and the coldness in his voice cut deeper than any accusation. As the house emptied and silence became my only companion, I felt lost. I walked through the rooms, touching objects that told the story of our family. It was then that on the living room table, among some papers and magazines, my eyes landed on a drawing by Ethan. It was a colorful scribble, typical of a 7-year-old, showing our house, the garden, and in the corner, a small figure that seemed to be me. But what caught my attention wasn't the figure, but an enigmatic symbol drawn next to it. A small circle with 3 irregular lines coming out of it, like rays. It wasn't a sun, nor a flower. It was something different, something I had never seen Ethan draw before. That drawing, a simple piece of paper, seemed to whisper a secret. A small spark of hope ignited amidst the darkness. Perhaps, just perhaps, that scribble was more than a child's drawing. Perhaps it was a map, a path to the truth no one dared to speak. My humiliation turned into a quest, a silent determination to unravel the mystery behind that symbol, and, with it, the hidden family truth that had turned my life upside down. I wouldn't be the villain. I would be the one seeking justice. The revelation from Leo about Brenda hit me like lightning. Aunt Brenda, the woman who always presented herself as the cool aunt, the family friend, now revealed herself as the possible architect of my misfortune. That sweet smile, those eyes that never reached her soul, now seemed like masks of cold, calculated manipulation. I needed to understand why. What was the motive behind such cruelty? The following days were a silent torture. I observed Brenda from afar, in photos on Sarah's social media, at family gatherings from which I was now excluded. Every gesture, every word of hers, was analyzed under a new light. I remembered how she always praised Ethan excessively, how she showered him with expensive toys, often ignoring Sarah's wishes. At the time, I saw it as generosity. Now it seemed like a tactic, a way to buy a child's loyalty. The house, once a haven of happy memories, now felt like a minefield of suspicion. I felt like a detective in my own life, searching for clues, for inconsistencies. I began to revisit past conversations, trying to find the moment when the seed of discord was planted. I recalled a Thanksgiving dinner about a year ago when Brenda, with a casual air, commented on Sarah's luck in having such a present mother who took care of everything. At the time, I felt complimented. Now, the word present sounded like meddling and took care of everything, like controlling. The family continued to treat me with cutting coldness. Sarah avoided my calls, David answered in monosyllables. The only person who still offered me some comfort was my friend Eleanor, who, though shocked by the accusation, refused to believe I was capable of such an act. "Amelia, I've known you for 40 years. You would never hurt a fly, much less your grandson," she told me, and her words were a balm to my wounded soul. I decided I needed more proof, something concrete I could present to my family. Brenda's studio, the annex to Sarah's house, was the obvious place to start. But how to get in there without raising suspicion? Sarah had forbidden me from coming to her house. The idea of trespassing on my own daughter's property sent a chill down my spine, but the injustice I was suffering was a fire that propelled me. I remembered that Sarah and Brenda had a habit of going to a local farmer's market together every Saturday morning. This was my chance. I needed a distraction, something that would keep them out of the house long enough for me to get into Brenda's studio. I started researching the market, its hours, the average length of their visit. Every detail was crucial. The loneliness was overwhelming, sleepless nights, days filled with obsessive thoughts. I missed Ethan's laughter, Sarah's hugs, David's conversations. But the pain of exclusion gave me a strange strength. I wasn't just fighting for my reputation, but for the truth, for the integrity of my family. If Brenda was manipulating Ethan, who else could she be manipulating? And why? That Saturday morning, the sun rose with an intensity that seemed to mock the darkness in my heart. I dressed in discreet clothes, grabbed Sarah's house keys, which I still had, a remnant of happier times, and drove to her house. The plan was risky, but the truth was worth every risk. I was about to cross a line, but it was a line I needed to cross to bring light back into my life and to my family. The shadow of doubt hung over me, but I was determined to dispel it, no matter the cost. Saturday dawned with an impeccable blue sky, a cruel contrast to the storm raging within me. I drove to Sarah's house, my heart pounding like a war drum. The neighborhood, usually bustling, was strangely quiet. I parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the way, feeling like an intruder in my own family. Sarah's house, with its flowered windows, and Ethan's bicycle in the yard, looked like a postcard of happiness. But I knew that behind that facade, dark secrets were hidden. I used the spare key, which Sarah had given me years ago, and entered the house. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the clock in the living room. Every step I took echoed, amplifying my anxiety. I went straight to the annex, Brenda's studio. The door was ajar, and a strong smell of paint and solvent hung in the air. The studio was an organized chaos, with unfinished canvases, scattered brushes, and pots of paint of all colors. My eyes scanned the room, looking for anything that resembled the symbol from Ethan's drawing. And then I saw it. On a shelf, among some art books and magazines, there was a small wooden box, very similar to the one Robert had kept his secrets in. And on the lid, carved, was the same symbol, a circle with 3 wavy lines. It wasn't a logo, it was a signature. Brenda's signature. My hands trembled as I picked up the box. It was locked, but next to it, there was a small keychain with several keys. I tried them one by one, and on the third attempt, the box opened with a soft click. Inside, I found a stack of papers, some notebooks, and a small digital recorder. I picked up the first notebook. It was a diary, handwritten, in Brenda's elegant script. I started reading, and every word was a punch to my gut. Brenda wrote about her resentment towards Sarah, her older sister, who had always been the favorite child, the perfect woman. She envied Sarah's life, her marriage, her house, her son. And above all, she envied the love and attention I, Sarah's mother, dedicated to my daughter and my grandson. Amelia has always been the matriarch, the queen of the family, she wrote, in an entry dated 6 months ago. But now it's my turn to shine. Sarah needs a reality check. She needs to see that life isn't a fairy tale. And Amelia will pay for all the years she made me feel invisible. I continued reading, and the pattern revealed itself with terrifying clarity. Brenda had planned everything. From the expensive gifts for Ethan, the secret adventures that kept him away from me, to the subtle manipulation that led him to accuse me. She wanted to destroy my reputation, isolate Sarah from me, and, in the process, become the central figure in Ethan's life. And then, I reached the most recent entry, dated just a week before Ethan's accusation. The plan is in motion. Ethan is ready. He believes it's a game, a secret between us. He's going to say what I taught him to say. And Amelia is going down. And Sarah will finally see who the real villain is. My eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness, but of anger and cold determination. I had the proof. I had the motive. But one piece was still missing: the digital recorder. I pressed the play button, and Brenda's voice filled the studio. It was a recording of her, teaching Ethan what to say, how to act, how to accuse me. Ethan's voice, innocent and confused, asking if it was a real game. And Brenda's voice, cold and manipulative, assuring him that yes, it was the most important game of all, game. The recording was the missing piece, the irrefutable proof of Brenda's manipulation. I had everything I needed to expose her, but how to present this to my family, who were so blinded by pain and anger? I needed a plan that would not only reveal the truth, but also protect Ethan and heal the wounds Brenda had inflicted. I left Brenda's studio, the wooden box and the digital recorder hidden in my bag. The facade of happiness of Sarah's house now seemed like a cruel joke. I had the truth, and the truth I knew would be my greatest weapon. With the wooden box and the digital recorder firmly secured, I returned home, feeling the weight of the truth in my hands. Anger and indignation simmered within me, but they were tempered by a deep sadness. My family had been deceived, and Ethan, my sweet grandson, had been used as a pawn in a cruel game. I needed to act, and I needed to act wisely. I called Sarah and David, asking them to come to my house the next day. I used a tone of voice that allowed no refusal, something I rarely did, but the urgency of the situation demanded it. "We need to talk. It's about Ethan, and it's important," I said, and the silence on the other end of the line told me they sensed the gravity of the moment. On Sunday morning, the day that once symbolized family joy and togetherness, a palpable tension hung in the air. Sarah arrived first, her eyes swollen and an expression of exhaustion. David followed shortly after, his face serious and worried. I sat them down in the living room, on the same sofa where we had so often shared laughter and confidences. The air was heavy, laden with unspoken accusations and recent hurts. "I know you're angry with me," I began, my voice firm but with an almost imperceptible tremor. "And I understand, but I didn't hurt Ethan. And I have proof," Sarah scoffed, crossing her arms. "Mom, please, don't start that again. Ethan said what happened. You need to accept it." David, however, looked at me with a glimmer of curiosity. What proof, Mom? I placed the wooden box on the coffee table, opening it carefully. I took out Brenda's diary and the digital recorder. This belongs to Brenda, I explained, and I saw the surprise on their faces. I found it in her studio, and what's written here and what's recorded here will change everything you think about what happened. Sarah picked up the diary, flipping through the pages with skepticism. This is a diary, Mom. It proves nothing. Read it, I said, pointing to one of the most incriminating entries. As she read, her face lost color, her expression of anger replaced by growing shock. David leaned in, reading over his sister's shoulder. The silence in the room was almost deafening, broken only by the turning of pages. When Sarah finished reading, her eyes were tearful. No, it can't be, she whispered, her voice choked. Brenda would never do something like this. Brenda did, I replied, picking up the recorder. And she did it to destroy our family, to isolate me from you, and to become the central figure in Ethan's life. I pressed the play button. Brenda's voice filled the room, cold and calculating, teaching Ethan to lie, to accuse me. Ethan's innocent voice, asking if it was a real game, and Brenda's voice, assuring him that yes, it was the most important game of all. Sarah sobbed, covering her face with her hands. David, for his part, was pale, his fists clenched. The naked truth had been revealed. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Brenda, with her sweet smile and her eyes that never reached her soul. She had been called by Sarah, who in her confusion had asked her sister to come to support her against my madness. The irony was cruel. "Hello, family. What's going on here?" she asked, entering the room with an air of false concern. Her eyes swept the room, stopping at the open wooden box and the diary in my hands. A flicker of panic crossed her face, but she quickly disguised it. "Brenda," David said, his voice tense. "What is this?" He pointed to the diary. Brenda tried to maintain her composure. "Oh, that? It's just one of my notebooks. Amelia, why are you snooping through my things?" "I'm not snooping, Brenda," I said, my voice filled with an authority I didn't know I possessed. "I'm uncovering the truth, and the truth is that you manipulated Ethan, and you manipulated Sarah and David to accuse me of something I never did." Brenda laughed, a forced, humorless laugh. "Amelia, you're delusional. I would never do something like that. I love Ethan. I love Sarah." "You don't love anyone but yourself, Brenda," Sarah said, standing up, tears streaming down her face. "I read your diary. I heard the recording." Brenda's face paled. She tried to deny, tried to defend herself, but her words were empty, without conviction. The mask had fallen, revealing the cold, calculating manipulation behind the sweet smile. The truth, finally, had come to light, and with it, the promise of a justice I had sought with such determination. The living room, once the scene of an unjust accusation, now witnessed the disintegration of a carefully constructed lie. Brenda, unmasked, tried one last gambit, appealing to emotion, to sisterhood. "Sarah, you're not going to believe Amelia's craziness, are you? She's old, confused. I'm your sister." But Sarah, her eyes brimming with pain and disappointment, shook her head. "I read it, Brenda. I heard it. You used my son. You used my mother. You used us." Sarah's voice was a mix of sadness and anger, and her strength filled me with renewed pride. David, who had been in shock until then, finally spoke up. "Brenda, what you did is unforgivable. You not only hurt Mom, but you also manipulated Ethan. That's a crime." Brenda, realizing her charade was over, tried to flee. But David, with a surprising agility, blocked her exit. "You're not going anywhere, Brenda. Not until the police arrive." The mention of the police made Brenda collapse. She started crying, not out of remorse, but out of self-pity, out of anger at being caught. As David called the authorities, Sarah came to me, her arms wrapping around me in a tight embrace. Mom, forgive me. Forgive me for not believing you, for doubting your love, your integrity. Tears streamed down my face, but this time they were tears of relief, of redemption. I love you, my daughter, I whispered, feeling the warmth of her hug. I always have. The police arrived quickly and discreetly. Brenda was taken away, handcuffed, her protests muffled by the closed door. Justice, though painful, was being served. But the real battle, I knew, would be the rebuilding of our family. The first and most important task was to take care of Ethan. Sarah and I went to his room, where we found him huddled in bed, his eyes red from crying. "Grandma Amelia, Mommy," he whispered, and the guilt in his eyes broke my heart. "My love, it's not your fault," I said, hugging him. "You were deceived. You were manipulated. But now the truth has come out, and we're going to help you understand everything." Sarah, with a sweetness I hadn't seen in her for a long time, explained to Ethan that Aunt Brenda had played a very bad game and that he wasn't to blame for anything. It took time, many conversations, and the help of a child psychologist, but Ethan, with his child's resilience, began to heal. He understood that he wasn't a bad boy for having lied, but rather a victim of cruel manipulation. The family, shaken by the revelation, began a healing process. David, with visible remorse, apologized to me and Sarah for his lack of support. He became a pillar of strength, helping to organize the legal matters and ensure that Brenda faced the consequences of her actions. Sarah's house, which had once been a minefield of suspicion, now became a sanctuary of honesty and forgiveness. Brenda was prosecuted for parental alienation and child manipulation. The diary and the recording were irrefutable evidence. She received a prison sentence and was required to undergo psychological treatment. Poetic justice manifested not only in punishment, but in the opportunity for rebuilding that it offered us. Rebuilding our family was not easy. There were difficult conversations, tears, and moments of doubt. But the foundation of our love, which Brenda tried to destroy, was stronger than any manipulation. We learned to value honesty, communication, and the importance of believing in each other, even when appearances deceive us. That child's drawing, with its enigmatic symbol, had indeed been a map to a truth no one dared to speak. And that truth, though painful, set us free. 6 months have passed since the night the truth came to light. The dust has settled, the wounds have begun to heal, and our family, though scarred, has emerged stronger and more united than ever. I, Amelia, at 68 years old, had gone through the worst pain of my life, but I had also found a strength and determination I didn't know I possessed. Ethan, my sweet grandson, was flourishing again. The sessions with the psychologist helped him process Brenda's manipulation, and he returned to being the cheerful and affectionate boy I knew. His blue eyes, once clouded by confusion, now shone with the innocence and trust of a child who feels safe and loved. He still drew, but now his drawings were full of vibrant colors, without enigmatic symbols, just the pure joy of childhood. Sarah and David, my children, had become my greatest defenders. Sarah, who was once impulsive and easily influenced, now showed a maturity and wisdom that filled me with pride. She became a more attentive, more present mother, and our relationship, once shaken by distrust, was now based on mutual honesty and respect. David, in turn, became my safe harbor again, always ready to listen, to support, to protect. The house, which once felt like a minefield of suspicion, was now once again a haven of love and laughter. Sundays were again filled with the smell of apple pie, lively conversations, and the joy of seeing my family gathered. But there was a difference. Now there was a greater awareness of the fragility of family ties, the importance of protecting each other, and the need to always seek the truth, even when it is painful. Brenda was still in prison, serving her sentence. I didn't hate her, only felt a deep sadness. She had chosen the path of envy and manipulation, and the consequences of her choices were hers to bear. I, on the other hand, had chosen the path of truth and forgiveness, and the reward was the rebuilding of my family. I learned that a reputation, once destroyed, can be rebuilt, but trust, once broken, requires immense effort to restore, and that a mother's love, though unconditional, also needs boundaries and respect. I was no longer the naive matriarch who silently accepted everything. I was a woman who had faced adversity, who had fought for the truth, and who had emerged stronger and wiser. That child's drawing, with its enigmatic symbol, had indeed been a map to a truth no one dared to speak, a map to the darkness that hid beneath the surface of our family. But it was also a map to light, to redemption, to rebuilding. Today, sitting on my porch, watching Ethan and his cousins play in the yard, I feel a deep peace. Life gives us painful lessons, but it also gives us the chance to transform pain into wisdom, resentment into forgiveness, and rivalry into unity. Our family had learned this the hard way, but also the truest way possible. If you, like me, have ever felt wronged, had your truth silenced, or are struggling to rebuild something broken, know that the truth, however painful, always sets us free. And that love, when true, always finds a way to redemption. Share your story in the comments, like this video if it touched your heart, and subscribe to the channel for more stories of overcoming adversity and justice. Together, we can show that truth always prevails.